Welcome pilots, my name is Hybrid V, and I have some awesome footage of me and my organization, the Forgotten Heralds, as we conduct some PvE, PvP operations in Pyro. Now what you're seeing here is our carrack laden with Marines and obviously operational crewmen aboard, as well as a 4-man escort, getting them through the jump gate. The goal here of this first half of the operation is to gain some loot. So obviously everybody starts with a wipe in this patch, so we're all back to square one. So what we're doing here is we are going to hit a Xenothreat outpost, destroy the defenses that litter the area, then land, drop off Marines, and slowly clear out the outpost of Xenothreat Marines that are there, and then basically take anything that is not nailed down, throw them into some crates, and then head back to Stanton and divvy up the loot. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and let this sequence play out, because of course we all love the jump points. I love the jump points, so let's let it play out. I'll be right back to do some more narration here soon. Another awesome jump as always. I always get an absolute kick out of doing the jumps to Pyro and back. And in fact, actually in this patch, the jumps back and forth have been the most stable out of everything else in Star Citizen. There's a lot of stuff that breaks, obviously, but the jump points back and forth have been absolutely rock solid. So I've been enjoying it. So I'm jumping ahead here in the footage because our escort here, our Wraith Flight, as we called ourselves, we are making our way towards the objective area. We are now above the planet that we're going to be hitting, and then we're going to be going to Last Ditch to assault this Xenothreat outpost here. We're going to clear out the defenses ahead of time. Now you may be asking yourself, why are we using only Guardians instead of, say, I don't know, an A1 or even an A2? And the reason why, I'll make it a little bit more cogent example of this a little bit later, but the reason is just, well, for one, the Guardian is awesome. It's a fantastic ship. Definitely really fun, super tanky, got great firepower too. Among other things though, it's a really fantastic ship. So other than that, I'll kind of explain a little bit more later, but I kind of want to show off this sequence here. The other thing you're going to notice in this video is I'm not going to include any of our normal communications like I do normally in my other videos. I know a lot of you who watch like the radio communication stuff that I do with the voices that we have for our Discord and when we're actually communicating for these operations. And the reason why I'm not going to include it this time around is because I really want you guys to hear a lot of the sights and sounds Star Citizen has to offer when it's running on all cylinders and it's really working to its full potential here. And I really want you guys just to hear the experience and stuff like that and just enjoy without the distraction of the background communications that generally runs through this stuff. So I want to kind of take a break here from me talking and giving you guys some insights, and I really want you to really just sit back, relax, and enjoy this kind of opening action sequence as we dive in and we start to take out these defenses that are owned by Xenothreat. Because remember, the goal here is we're going to be flying in, taking out those defenses and then calling in our Marines to come in and start clearing out the enemy ground forces that are down below, and try to have them clear that all out, grab any and all loot they can find, including the armors the enemy are wearing and their weapons, secure all that, and then take off, and we're going to head back to Stanton and basically divvy up all the loot from there. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and take a break from commentating here for just a little bit. I want you guys to crank the volume up and just really get yourself immersed into it. And I'll be right back. I'll kind of do some commentary in between and talk a little bit in between, but for now, let's just enjoy the experience. All right, so you can see here that this is a pretty intense attack. You got a bunch of ballistic turrets. I believe they have revenants attached on those turrets, as well as you have some missile turret platforms that are trying desperately to swat us out of the sky. And they do a decent amount of damage. Obviously, they're ballistic, so they can go through our shields, but the amount of HP and the excellent shielding on the Guardian makes it an excellent strafing platform. It is interceptor tuned, so it is not, you know, pretty much like a rate fighter or anything like that. It really does struggle against more agile ships. In fact, even in a nose-to-nose, you'll get a little bit more mileage out of a Lightning when it comes to the agility over the Guardian, which is funny to say because the Guardian does obviously have the articulating main engine, so it has really good strafe, but its nose authority is still pretty poor. It's got that interceptor tuning, so it's really good in a straight line, but when it comes to doing a lot more hard offsets and stuff like that, it definitely does have some room to be improved on that. Now, of course, being that it's interceptor tuned, it's just that's the way they have balanced it. Though, because it's an interceptor, it makes an excellent dive bomber or in this case, it makes a really good platform for basically strafing ground targets in this case, and then minimizing the return fire by diving below cover and kind of doing some nap at the earth flying. And you can see there's a bug right here where I'm targeting this thing, but it's not giving me gimbals, so my weapons aren't actually converging on the target. So yeah, I have a weird gun convergence issue as a result. Luckily, one of the other flight wings there were able to help me finish it off. Now, obviously, I'm running a repeater loadout here. My goal in this flight here is to mostly be utilized in a dogfighting capacity. So if we run into other fighters, my job is to stay on them and take them out. And then we have others who have their kind of more default loadout with those laser cannons, and they're kind of the heavy bruisers that are going to be going after other heavy fighters, other multi-crew ships that may show up. Because, of course, it's Pyro, so there's going to be a chance of PvP, so we want to be sure we have a little bit of everything in our loadouts. But I'm trying the best I can here with my repeaters to really put some heat onto these turrets and destroy them. So back to the topic I was talking about earlier about why we didn't bring like an A2 or an A1 or whatever. And the reason why is because bombers in Star Citizen right now suck. They are absolutely terrible, especially the A1 and the A2 in terms of their role of doing, for example, dropping bombs on these turrets. They're absolutely terrible at it. And let me explain. For one, the A1 is absolute garbage because it has a huge flaw, and that is that its bombs are vertically dropped. So what this means is when you're doing a bombing run with the A1, because the bombs are vertically dropped, when they leave the bomb bay, they start to tumble immediately out of the bomb bay because they're vertically dropped, so they basically start to tumble. What this means is the accuracy of the A1 is absolute trash, especially at higher altitudes or even when you're trying to dive bomb. You have to get very close to get better accuracy. On top of that, with the way turrets and, of course, how the servers are performing a little bit better in terms of giving the AI the ability to react accordingly when they see threats, they will generally target torpedoes and bombs almost instantaneously and try to shoot them. So one common occurrence when you're trying to bomb, especially at altitude, is that the turrets will destroy your bombs almost immediately and either destroy your ship or completely knock it off course and heavily damage it. So you have to take out the turrets with something else before you can actually engage in bombing runs. So it really just makes it redundant and just completely worthless. With the A2, it's a little bit better. You do have some better accuracy with the A2, and that's because the bombs are actually dropped horizontally, so they're a little bit better, but they are still drag bombs, and they still suffer from some accuracy issues because they're drag bombs. But they also suffer from the issue of turrets actually shooting them out of the sky as well and causing problems. They still suffer from that same issue as well. Over here we have a player that actually showed up on scope, and our ROE is to keep players away from our operational space with force if necessary. Normally, like if we're in Stanton, we're friendly to other players and we'll say, hey guys, we're doing something here, please leave. And we'll basically fired unless fired upon. But in this case, because it's Pyro, we can't take any chances. We have no idea what people's intentions are. And of course, it's lawless, an entirely lawless system. So what we do is we fired some warning shots at this player. We tried hailing them, we tried everything we could, and then we shot at them a little bit to try to spook them off. For some reason, they decided that, hey, I still really want to come down here and check this out. Remember, we have Marines that are going to be dropping in, and this player could be a potential hazard to them. We don't want to endanger our personnel. So we were firing warning shots. We were calling this guy. We were like, hey, get out of here. This is an operation area. There's players here that are attacking, and he wasn't listening. So we had to make the unfortunate call of destroying them. We don't like to generally ruin other players' days like that if we can help it, but you should see other players here operating, and they're doing warning shots. They're calling you. It's obvious these players are not friendly to you. That should tell you, okay, maybe I'll come back later. But sometimes some people just don't get the message, or they're not paying attention, or they're doing something else. Something is going on, but the reality is we can't take that risk. We can't take the risk of somebody coming in and really spoiling the milk for what we're trying to do over here. We're trying to do an operation, a coordinated attack on this outpost, and other players, we give them the opportunity to walk away. We do warning shots and stuff like that, and if they don't listen, then they get the business end of our stick. Just the reality of it. So we are mostly cleared of all the turrets here, so we call in the Marines, and they're about to get to work here shortly, clearing out the ground forces. You can still see there's a little bit of lag with the servers, but for the most part, everything was behaving pretty well. But back to the topic of air-to-ground assaults. So yeah, like I was saying, A1 and A2 are pretty crap. I think what could be done a lot better is if we had those size 3 bombs put in game for players to use. Currently, right now, we do have size 3 bombs in-game and in shops that you can purchase. You can't put them on anything right now currently. There's no hard points that you can attach them to. And I think size 3 bombs would be a lot better, because problem is with CIG is I think they went a little bit too big with the bombs in the beginning with like the A1 and the A2. And big giant bombs are really flashy and really cool, but from a tactical perspective, not always necessarily the greatest choice. If I'm trying to preserve assets on the ground, or I want to preserve things that I want to potentially loot at an outpost, I probably don't want to obliterate everything and have it get flown kilometers away from the impact point. I probably would like to surgically strike individual points. For example, like those turrets there, I would love to drop bombs, like size 3 bombs on those turrets, come in and maybe dive bomb them or whatever, and really just knock them out. That would be a much better strategy, right? And of course, if there was enemy ground vehicles down there, such as players or NPCs, I could dive bomb those as well. And with size 3 small diameter bombs, I would hope that they would also be hard for the AI to pick off compared to the much larger diameter bombs, which are just stupidly easy to shoot. So yeah, that's my little bit of a gripe currently with close air support currently in Star Citizen, is that it's very inflexible. The current systems are just not really that great for it. The balance is a little bit too off. I understand why they want the bombs to be really easily picked off, just like how torpedoes are really easily picked off, but it really means there's no room to work with there. But that can be alleviated if we were given those small diameter bombs to work with, so that way it's a lot easier to do this stuff and we have more flexibility to operate with not as bigger yields, but definitely more surgical strikes, rather than having huge, ginormous bombs that you would drop on everything. I think we also had some NPCs that had spawned on scope as well here. Once the Marines had touched down, it looked like, I think the game probably spawns. I think these might be reinforcements. I'm not 100% certain, but it was a Valkyrie that had spawned on here, and it looked like it was maybe potentially trying to land, but we all just completely obliterated it before it became a huge problem. And then at this point, we just flew around and we were checking to see if other turrets were spawning, and some of them were, so we just came in and would pick them off and just keep providing coverage for the Marines to do their job. Jumping ahead, some time has passed as the entire outpost was cleansed of hostile threats, and then anything and everything that was not nailed down was looted up, packed up, and put into crates. And then the Marines were then extracted, and then our goal here was to now head back to Stanton. Obviously, this type of operation requires a lot of constant moving parts, so it's important to do a lot of really good coordination, as these type of events really require a lot out of the players that take part in them. Mostly because the bugs definitely tend to get in the way of a lot. It really tends to hamper the enthusiasm and fun, but when it does work, it's really, really fun to really pull off and get it going. But yeah, major issues that tends to happen in this patch is a lot of inventory issues. Many of you have probably seen it before, right? Where like your backpack or something doesn't load properly. Those are really annoying. Or if you try to hand off items in a backpack, those also don't load properly. It's just all kinds of weird issues here and there. But when it does work, it's a lot of fun. And in this case, you know, the AI were working great. They were fighting back. The turrets were working great. They were fighting back, right? And then we were finding some pretty decent loot, packing them up, sending them away. Of course, we found out later that the 8 SCU crates weren't working properly. So if somebody owned the crate, they couldn't access the crate. So there was just all kinds of annoying issues. You try to access the crate, but it wasn't your crate. So what ended up happening is that it would have the infinite load on that. So you had no ability to access it. So it kind of annoyed a lot of players, because it kind of also made this operation a little bit annoying to work with in that regard. But anyway, the goal here was for Wraith, the escort squadron, to actually go back and get some fuel, and then meet up with Prophet, who was the actual Carrick, and go back to the jump point and escort them back through and get back to Stanton. And like I said, the jump points have been the real saving grace here. They've been rock solid despite all the issues, as the pop caps have been increasing over that weekend that we were playing, and they've just been working just fine. So even if there's problems or whatever, still an operation like this was still a success, because we can grab all the stuff that we wanted, take off, and then go through the jump point and head back home, no problems whatsoever. And it really felt so incredible to pull off. Like, we just went, you know, from Bajini, which is where our initial start point was here in this operation, and then we went through the jump point with all these other players, and then we went in and engaged all these hostiles on the ground, took out this outpost, grabbed all the loot, everything like that, You know, did this within about 2 hours this operation took, and then jumped through the jump point and headed back home and dropped off all the loot. It just felt like a really awesome raiding party. I really enjoyed it. I can't wait to do this stuff, say, against like another player's base in the future, like another organization's base. Like, this is going to be so cool. You know, taking off from your own base or base of operations, jumping through the jump point with your friends or whatever, coming in and destroying the other players' bases or their turrets or their defense systems, and then taking what is nailed down and taking it back home. Maybe the other players are trying to defend it, or they're trying to chase you and get their stuff back. Like, I really see this dynamic being really cool. Against the AI, it's fun, but against the AI, it definitely can be a little bit seal clubby. It's not always the most challenging. The AI does put up a good fight, but for the most part, CIG does rely on like quantity over the quality of the AI. So like, although they have like really good NPCs that can be really like laser beam in their accuracy, for the most part, if you're a competent FPS player, the AI don't generally give you too hard of a problem, especially if you're working together as a team. And I think that's probably because I think CIG really wants to stress the emphasis that we're like the heroes in this universe. We are the heroes. We are the exceptional ones that exist in this universe. So us killing tons of AI, both ships and pirates on the ground or whatever like that in FPS, that is like the expected outcome, because we are, like I said, the heroes in the story. Almost like kind of reminds me of like a theme park MMO like World of Warcraft or something like that, right? Where you are expected to be the hero of the story in many respects, right? So yeah, successful operation. Again, the Guardian really shines here. It has a fantastic interior, great HP, good shielding, good weapons. So it is really good in the role of being an escort fighter, especially for something like Pyro with its distance, because it has pretty good distance. It still needs to refuel every so often, but it can get pretty decently far without needing carrier assistance. So it definitely can help out in regards to protecting your assets. In this case, we had our carrack full of Marines. And as you can see, through that operation, a pretty worn my Guardian was. Really, really cool look there. But anyway, let's jump up to the next operation that we did. Now, I'm always in the cockpit of a ship because I do like flying in Star Citizen. I love dogfighting and everything. But, you know, every so often you also got to be, you know, a Marine every so often as well, too. So in this one, this is us at a actual Supervisor asteroid base in Pyro, because we're going to try to collect some red keys, and we're going to do some FPS combat action here. So yeah, again, just to give you guys a little bit of a taste of different aspects of Pyro right now currently, especially for the PvE and PvP aspect. And of course, in this one, we do run into some PvP after some initial PvE. Once again, I'm going to pipe down for a little bit and let you guys just enjoy the audio and just kind of soak in the atmosphere of how the game is playing out currently in these bases and whatnot, how the combat plays out. So I'm going to go ahead and take a break from the commentary here and just let things play out for a bit. I recommend you turn your volume up on your device and really just kind of immerse yourself in the experience that you're about to see here, and really just enjoy the sights and sounds and audio that CIG have crafted for us in this experience, as well as the music, because Pedro absolutely crushed it in this patch. I absolutely love his work. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and shut up now, and I'll be right back. Food items are such a good item to have in Pyro, and there's really good food items, obviously, in these bases. At the actual stations, you know, there's water that has toxic debuffs. I don't think the toxic debuff does anything right now, I think it's supposed to actually hurt your health or something like that. I'm not 100% certain, but it doesn't do anything right now. I know that there used to be a toxicity on the sunset berries. They probably still do, and those used to actually hurt you. They used to do damage over time, but the reclaimed water has toxicity and it doesn't seem to do anything. So yeah, it's a little bit weird. I think that's very strange, and that's the most abundant water you can get in Pyro. But when you come to these stations, they have pretty good loot, including MREs and bottles of water, which are pretty good to have, obviously, in a scenario where you're in combat and you're exerting yourself a lot, so your character is going to definitely be thirsty and hungry quite a bit. So having that and finding that in the loot is actually really good. You might have also have noticed that I found a Valakar plushie, which I also noticed that I had just dropped it on the ground, and there it is. So that is the sandworm. There's a sandworm plushie that I found there, which is just really cool. Very strange, and of course the comments that were being made at this point in the channel, because I was also streaming to everybody else during this operation in our Discord. Everybody was making some jokes based on its, you know, the shape of this this thing. But still, it's cool that, you know, this is in the loot table, getting a plushie like that. But yeah, so we were operating with a small fire team through here. This wasn't one of our more bigger operations. This was just us trying to have some fun, trying out these supervisor bases and trying to get some keys, and then head back out and go to the contested zones, get some more guys together and try to hit those hard. So this was more of us just kind of having fun, not really being like super serious. But you can see these bases are just chock full of NPCs, and also it has a lot of really intense choke points as well as some really great hidey holes. So it's really fantastic for PvP, as you will see here shortly. I'm going to go ahead and jump forward ahead when we start to see some real interesting action. So what we're trying to do here, like I said earlier, is we're trying to print out some key cards. And those key cards are needed for certain areas within the game that are contested zones. They require key cards to open, and you need to go to these asteroid bases to actually print out a key card so you can unlock those vaults, essentially, that are protected by Xenothreat and whatnot, and you can go in there and get some pretty good loot as well. Unfortunately, to get to that key card area, you need to find a fuse. We luckily found a fuse. We were able to open the door. And of course, the mayhem unfolded, so I'm going to take a break from talking here and just let the audio play out. Again, recommend you turn that volume up. Once this section was clear, it was obvious that the next step was to actually get into the security checkpoint that's actually in the center of this area we just entered. And we have to figure out how to get in there so we can start printing the keys. And one solution we found was actually pretty hilarious. So this area has two areas, or two ways I should say, that you can get into the security checkpoint. And there is a vent that you can go above, which is a lot easier than this one. This method here is the second way you can get up, and you actually need to ragdoll a player up there. In this case, I knocked out Venge, and we tractored him up to the top there into the actual room so he can unlock the door. So this is just a funny way you can get in. Of course, there was another way you can get in, and there was a vent that you can do, which is a lot easier than this. But I do like that there is this silly way of being able to put someone in there. So there is a separate way of getting in. So if you are, for example, in a PvP scenario and you're trying to figure out how to route players out of that center area, there are multiple ways you can do it, including a sneaky way, say, you know, tractoring another player up in there. So yeah, he goes in there and he unlocks the door for us, and we're able to get into the security room. And then once you're in the security room, that is where you'll find the printer. It has a 30-minute cooldown in between every print for a key. So once you have printed a key, you have to wait the entire 30-minute cycle before you can print another key again. So if you do decide you want to farm keys here, you will have to make sure you bring friends and plenty of ammo to ensure that you can hold off other players that are going to definitely want to come in and grab a key of their own as well. Like I said, these keys are for the contested zones. You can find them in like Obituary, Ruin Station, or I believe, what's the other one? Is it Checkmate? I think it is. Actually, the Ruin Station's different. Ruin Station has its own printing keys sections all built into Ruin, so that's a little bit different. But this one, for example, you could take the key cards here and go into the locked room that's in Obituary. So that one is really useful for that. So that's why printing keys here is pretty important for that. But anyway, we decided to establish ourselves here. We were able to get a good foothold. But then something interesting actually happened. So let's jump to that. So we ended up actually running into a problem, and that was an enemy Polaris had actually showed up in the area, and it was an entire organization of other players coming in to get keys. So our own team was trying to hold the entrance, and unfortunately some of them got taken down, so I came back over here to reinforce. I'm going to go ahead and get quiet here and let you guys watch the action as it unfolds on screen, and of course I will come back to narrate here shortly. Again, volume up. So at this point, I have a problem. I'm the last man standing in my group. I could go back there to try to tractor people, but there is a lot of people in this group. A lot of players. There was a fully manned Polaris. Like all the turret stations were manned. So we know there was a lot of players here. We were only a small fire team. So I had to play smart here. And although my teammates were down, there was no real way I was going to be able to get them back up. So I had to play smart and buy time for them to come back. And one way I had to do that is I had to play some mind games with some of the enemies that were here. So I tried throwing a grenade to kind of buy myself some time because the other player, I think, went back probably to go revive his teammates. And I went and I was going to try to make life hell for this enemy here, but I decided against it because if I get pushed, it could be very easy for them to knock me down pretty quick if they go in force. So I'm trying to look for a really strong defensible position here. And I noticed this area here with laser trip mines. And it's a dead end here. We had checked this earlier, and I noticed it was a dead end. So being that it's a dead end, I can funnel all of them easily into this area and make their number counts a little bit more worthless compared to me. I just have to make sure that I can hold them off long enough to buy some time. The biggest issue I was going to run into was my ammo count, unfortunately. So I'm going to go ahead and jump ahead when they start looking around, because they obviously knew one player was still here, maybe more, but they weren't sure exactly where I was, so they were trying to kind of run around and try to clear the area. I also went ahead and took this fuse here, so if they did get past me, it was going to be a while before that fuse respawned. So if they were able to knock me down, it would still take them a while before they could get past that point, so that way we can still get in and maybe fight and basically slow them down. So I'm going to go ahead and jump because I end up holding this position pretty long and kind of just held it for a good point before we started running into some action and I started to ambush them. So I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. All right, so it's been about 15 minutes that had passed here, and they're looking for a fuse, so this means they're going to be on my way. So this was me springing my ambush on them. So again, I'm going to go quiet, turn the volume up, and enjoy. At this point, I'm pretty desperate. I have no ammo. I could use the ammo off of the enemy, but the looting process will take too long and potentially put me at risk. So all I'm really trying to do is just buy as much time as I possibly can and stop them while my teammates are still making their way towards my position. Unfortunately for me, this is a pretty bad spot because of the fact that the enemy has a Polaris on station, so they can consistently respawn their players back over and over again. And me basically having no ammo does mean that this fight is eventually not going to end in my favor, but again, my goal here is to slow them down as much as possible. I could have looted the other players, of course, but that time taken for looting does mean it gives the enemy the opportunity to push me while I'm trying to fight Star Citizen's inventory. And as you all know, the inventory, even with the quick loot system, is not the greatest and tends to be pretty darn buggy, so I have to work with the tools that I have given to me regardless. And there you go. 3v1 versus a flashlight pistol is not going to happen, but hey, you do what you can. So during this time, I decided to go back and get my Inferno as well as my Firebird a little bit later because I wanted to buy some time fighting this enemy Polaris and trying to distract them while we were trying to get another fire team in position to actually get in and try to clear out any remaining stragglers that may be aboard. So during this point, we were just kind of fighting. I was working with the other members of FH. Some of them were in Guardians, others were in Lightnings and various other craft, and I was over here in the Inferno. My goal here really was to annoy the crap out of the actual Polaris and try to draw it off the X a little bit. And of course, if it tried to get a little too close, I would try to aim at some of its turrets and try to knock out one of its turrets here or there where I can when it was actually distracted, because at some points it gets distracted and tries to go after other members of FH. It wasn't really too coordinated, and they weren't really trying to focus too much on the same players over and over, so I took the opportunity to use that to actually start attacking some of the turret systems. But really my goal was to be a distraction here and was to try to actually get my members into the actual station and then try to find my own way in a little bit later. A lot of people talk about how the Inferno and the Ion got nerfed and they're not really that good, and technically that's true when you're operating in a solo craft like I am. For example, I'm just operating with one Inferno. However, when you're operating with a wing of these things, they tend to be a lot more effective. Unfortunately, we did not have more than just me with one of them. If we were operating with about 4 more, it would have been better. We had a Lightning and another Guardian on station, and even those ships can't do really much to drain the shields, but you'll notice that with my effective fire, I'm actually starting to drain their shields with the Inferno. So one of the things I need you folks to realize is that don't sleep on the Inferno and Ion just because they singularly don't do a lot of damage. They are best designed to operate as a wing because their combined firepower does a lot more damage than if you were just to solo them and try to go after, say, a capital ship on your own, because by itself, it just doesn't have the firepower and capability of doing enough damage to really be effective at actually tearing these types of ships apart. And this fight drags on for quite a bit. The Inferno, as you can see, looking at the actual Polaris, I'm actually doing quite a bit of damage to its shields. And again, this is why I said, folks, like, a lot of people get mad about the Inferno and Ion based on the damage they do, but a single Inferno is almost taking out the entire shield facing of that Polaris. Now imagine if I had 3 other Infernos with me, or even more. You can imagine the sheer amount of damage this thing can do. So the reason why people get mad is just because the single point damage as just one Inferno or Ion is pretty terrible. But when you operate as a wing, and an effective wing, a combat communicative wing that actually works together to actually take down big threats, they're actually pretty scary, and in my opinion are far more effective than, say, Guardians, for example. And at this point I had run out of ammo for the Inferno, so I went back to go get my Firebird because the enemy started to roll out fighters, so I wanted to try to support my wing by taking out enemy fighters. There is a bug currently in this build where you cannot hear missiles being fired at you. You can't hear that wham, wham, wham alert as a missile approaches you. That audio cue is bugged right now currently. So you have to pay attention to the top center of your HUD to see the actual missile alerts letting you know a missile's headed towards you. Otherwise, you end up being like this player here who obviously wasn't aware of this bug and was just eating missile after missile. Again, I'm going to go ahead and take a break in the commentary here. I want you guys to hear this a little bit, just hear how the sounds play out here. So yeah, if you're not paying attention in PvP, that generally is going to be the way you're going to die quite a bit if you don't notice that warning telling you that missiles are coming. Just listen for the initial lock sound, that dee-dee-dee-dee sound letting you know that someone's locking a missile, and then once you hear that, that should tell you, okay, I need to pay attention to the top center and see when a missile is actually tracking on me. At this point, we're still trying to provide a distraction and trying to get more troops inside. I decided to break off because there's no more fighters, so our heavies are busy distracting the Polaris, and I use this as an opportunity to actually get myself inserted into the facility. Back in the facility, I fight through a bunch of NPCs, but we note that there's still players lurking around in the area. We have 2 players in our fire team that are currently at the security checkpoint, and I'm trying to hunt other players who are trying to go after them. They're trying to find the fuse and trying to get through the security door to actually get to them. So yeah, the other player was able to luckily hit me while I was trying to get back into cover. He had a scalpel, I could hear the sound of that, and I was down, but luckily I still had more members of my fire team who were going to be coming up the rear here shortly. And after I got revived here, it was time for us to push these guys and get them out of here. Luckily, our other 2 members were able to extract safely through the back entrance, and now it was our turn to clear them out and make our way out ourselves. I can't wait in the future for us to be able to take prisoners hostage or restrain them. For example, I would love to be able to take their weapons and gear and then restrain them to keep them from being a threat in the future, especially when it comes to dealing with a large organization. So for example, in that situation where our fire team was actually outnumbered and we got pushed out by that large org, I would have loved to have been able to restrain the ones that I had downed and then actually had put them in the back so that way they couldn't respawn and be a force multiplier consistently over and over, constantly pushing me. That would have made things a lot better in my favor, but we don't have that now, so we have to work with what we got. Anyway, so what happens here is we ended up actually getting the keys and extracting and actually getting out. Then we decided on a change of pace, and we wanted to actually hit Ruin Station and hit the Ghost Arena, because that one is pretty fun because it's all self-contained. And of course, the keys, you don't have to go anywhere else for them. You don't have to go for exterior printers for that. You can do everything pretty much right within the Ghost Arena. and it is a lot of fun. Now, the Ghost Arena is as it sounds. It's an arena where you can go to various areas on it and you can get different key cards, comp boards, and all that, and unlock different wings. And there's just tons and tons of fighting because obviously this is one of the ways you can actually get some of the boards that you need to get the executive hangars unlocked. We wanted to hang out, and mostly we're looking for a fight rather than actually trying to complete any particular objective. So we were moving as a crew, and we really just wanted to see what types of fights we can get. But also we wanted to see what type of loot we can get as well too, because of course there is the Scorched and Tweaker, different types of items you can get. The Scorched is like a different Scorched weapons. There are Scorched attachments. There's the Tweaker attachments you can get. And of course, this is also an excellent place to get Dead Rig shotguns, which are really, really strong shotguns. My favorite shotgun in the game currently, just because of how incredibly strong it is. And of course, there's tons of NPCs. It's just a lot of action. So if you're looking for a lot of fun in action and you want to kill some time, this is a great place to do it. Of course, it can be expensive because if you do die, it's going to be hard to get your stuff back if you're facing against a lot of players. But, you know, if you got some time to kill and you have money to burn, it's a great place to have some fun because you could potentially come out with some really good loot as well. So while we were exploring, obviously, we were coordinating and communicating and working as in pairs and small fire teams and just moving around looking for fuses to try to open some of the doors. And of course, we ran into some players. So I'm going to go ahead and step back from the commentary. And again, I recommend you turn your audio up and enjoy the action on screen and watch the PvP as it unfolds. So yeah, we ran into another small group and were able to dispatch them pretty quickly. You can see that the Dead Rig shotgun is just incredible at close range. So if you're able to just sneak up on your opponents and just lay waste to them, it is a very effective weapon, especially if your teammates can keep them distracted. At this point, we took all the enemy combatants that we had just killed and we deposited their bodies above the staircase because we knew they're going to probably try to get their gear back. So we wanted to make sure we consolidated all their gear into a defensible position so that way they can't quickly and easily get their equipment back. They would have to really fight for it to get it back. And this ensured that we had a really strong position and a localized source of ammunition for later that we could get easily. I'm going to go ahead and jump towards when we started running into more action. I believe it was probably the same people who were trying to come back because all of them had very different, varying levels of gear, as you'll see here shortly. You'll notice sometimes I turn on my night vision when I'm ADSing. That is unintentional. I generally like to always ADS and then sprint out of my ADS, but of course when you hit shift, when you're ADSing with the night vision scope, it turns it on. So occasionally you'll see it actually turn on, and that's because I'm trying to either break line of sight or break cover from what I'm currently doing, and it's not working because, of course, when you hit shift, that's how it turns on. So it's just a little bit annoying. Those little annoyances that have to do with the keybinds, and yeah, so that's why you'll see me turn on the night vision every so often. At this point, we realized there was actually a second group that showed up, and we got pincered in between the center and second floor areas, as well as a bunch of beacon suit characters running around everywhere. It was just absolute mayhem. So what we ended up doing is respawning and coming back and actually getting new kit and going back in and trying to flush these guys out. And just like that, we were able to reestablish dominance over the arena. Now at this point, we were going to try to consolidate our ammo, get our wounds patched up, and then try to hide the bodies, or at least pile them in an area that makes it hard for the enemy to get to if they need to rearm. So that way they're going to have to try to beacon suit their way back in like they did last time. And this is just going to be the last clip here for this video. We decided to actually switch servers because we were having just way too many problems with the one that we were currently on, so we decided to patch our wounds up and switch servers. There was a lot of inventory problems, but anyway, I'm going to let this play out. So right away we ran into a two-man fire team of players, and then shortly as this clip is about to end, my game actually crashed, which was also a common problem I was having as well too. A lot of other players were having that. And then we also, at one point while in the middle of fighting here, yeah, you'll see here it actually crashed. Actually, I don't think this is a crash. I think this actually goes to a black screen, which is a common issue because it's actually a 30K. The servers are not properly server erroring right now, so this is an issue that everybody experiences. This is technically a 30K. But yeah, bugs aside, it's really fun heading out there, doing some PvP and some PvE, and getting some really fun loot like the Scorched weapons here, like you're seeing the Scorched AO3, and then of course I'll show a clip here of the Scorched R97. There's a few Scorched variants. Currently, they have stats on them, and I think Zach has confirmed that some of the stats are going to be a little bit more different going forward. I think maybe they're slightly bugged, I think it was, or something like that. These Scorched items don't have any particular stats. It's the tweaker items, like the compensators and stuff like that, that have a lot better stats going for them. And I think Zach said when they come back in the subsequent patch, the Scorched items are going to be a little bit better as well, too. It'd be more fleshed out. But all right, folks, that's it for me today, showing you guys Forgotten Heralds operations in the Pyro system, doing PvE and PvP operations. If you did enjoy this video, please leave a like, as it really does help out the channel. And of course, if you want to see more videos like this and much more down the line, be sure to subscribe as well. And if you want to support the channel and the work I do here, consider becoming a channel member like these fine folks here who help make the channel even better by helping me put videos like this together for you all. But until next time, fly safe, keep those thrusters hot, and I'll see you all in the black.